Welcome to the Heartbreak Chronicles, where every story is a raw reflection of life. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned, give us a like to show your support, and share this episode with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Now, let's dive into today's story. Zack is a successful insurance broker who has been married for 20 years and has a 10-year-old daughter, Lucy. He thought he had a happy family until that fateful weekend. That day, Zack went to his mother's house to pick up Lucy. When I arrived at the door, I saw my mother in tears. Zack panicked, thinking something had happened. His mother took him by the hand and said, trembling, "Son, you've got to know the truth." Zack's heart sank. The mother plays a recording of an accidentally recorded call from Lucy's cell phone. Zack heard his wife, Emily's sweet voice. "Dear Scott, I've already made the arrangements. Next Friday, I'll tell Zack about an important business meeting, and then we can go to Vegas for a romantic weekend." Zack was thunderstruck, listening incredulously to the conversation between his wife and her lover, Scott. Not only are they talking about how to trick Zack, but they're also plotting something far worse. "Don't worry, baby," Scott said. "When we get back, you're going to press charges against Zack for domestic violence. I'll help you fabricate evidence that will get him busted and put him in jail. Then we'll be together in name only, and you'll get all the money and custody of Lucy." Emily smiled and said, "You're so smart, honey. Zack, that boring nerd, would never have thought of our plan. When he goes to jail, Lucy will forget all about him and recognize you as her new father." When Zack heard this, his legs gave out and he fell onto the couch. He couldn't believe that his wife, whom he had loved for 20 years, would betray him so mercilessly, even to the point of destroying his life and taking away his favorite daughter. The mother hugged Zack and whispered, "Son, I knew Emily wasn't a good match, but you wouldn't listen to me. Now that you know who she really is, you must be calm and protect yourself and Lucy." Zack nodded woodenly, his mind replaying the last 20 years. He remembers how he was so obedient to Emily that he gave up a lot of ideals and opportunities for her. Emily, on the other hand, has always thought of him as boring and nerdy, but she is already tired of the marriage. Zack fought back tears, not wanting to break down in front of Lucy. He took his daughter by the hand and drove home. On the way, Lucy innocently asked, "Daddy, what happened to you and Mommy? Why is Grandma crying so hard?" Zack managed to squeeze out a small smile. "It's okay, baby. Mom and Dad are just having a little trouble. It'll be over soon." He couldn't bear to let innocent Lucy know the harsh truth. Back at the house, Emily greeted them as if nothing had happened. She kisses Zack warmly on the cheek and asks how they're doing out there. Zack held back the anger and pain he felt inside and pretended it was business as usual. At dinner, Emily brings up the business trip next Friday. Zack's heart was pounding, but he said calmly, "Okay, honey, good luck with your work." Emily seemed relieved and smiled. "Thank you for understanding, dear. I promise to be back with you soon." Zack looked at Emily's gentle smile, and his insides turned inside out. He couldn't believe that the woman he had loved for 20 years was such a cold-blooded, heartless liar. That night, Zack tossed and turned, unable to sleep. He thought back over his time with Emily, trying to find the clues. He thought about Emily's recent frequent overtime work, her mysterious phone calls, and her increasingly cold attitude toward him. It turns out there was a pattern to everything, but he was too trusting to see it. Zack's heart is filled with anger, sadness, and despair. How he wanted to rush to Emily and ask her why she had betrayed him so cruelly. But reason told him not to do anything rash. If you alert the police, not only will you not be able to save the situation, but you may also fall into Emily and Scott's trap. Zack decided to calm down and think carefully about his response. He must protect himself and Lucy from Emily's schemes. He began to recall Scott's information, trying to figure out the breakthrough. Scott, Emily's coworker, is a cocky, arrogant man. Zack vaguely remembers Scott bragging drunkenly about how he dodged his taxes. A plan begins to take shape in Zack's mind. He decided to start by secretly investigating Scott's background and gathering evidence of his crimes. Exposing Scott's true colors would not only stop their plot, it would also allow Emily to see the man for what he is. Zack wipes away his tears and clenches his fists. He secretly vowed to protect Lucy from harm. At the same time, he will make those who betrayed him pay, not only for his own sake, but in defense of the dignity of the family. Over the next few days, Zack continued to play the role of devoted husband and loving father, ostensibly as usual. But secretly, he began his own investigation. He was careful to gather information so Emily wouldn't get suspicious. Zack's heart wrenched every time he saw Emily shushing Lucy. He didn't understand how a mother could hurt her own flesh and blood, but he knew that now was not the time to get emotional. For the sake of Lucy's future, he must deal with this crisis calmly and rationally. Thus, Zack embarks on an unknown path of revenge. He doesn't know what lies ahead, but he is determined to uncover the truth, seek justice, and protect his beloved daughter. It would be an uphill battle, but he'd give anything for Lucy. Zack knew that a single recording would not be enough to expose Emily and Scott's plot. He needs more hard evidence to have a legal advantage. So, he began a secret investigation. First, Zack used his position as an insurance broker and his contacts to quietly inquire about Scott's background. He discovers that Scott, despite his excellent work in the real estate company, has a very shady personal life. Colleagues have revealed that Scott frequented high-end nightclubs and was a spendthrift. Zack secretly wondered if Scott's salary, while not exorbitant, could ever support such an extravagant lifestyle. There must be something fishy about this. He decided to start his investigation with Scott's finances. Zack finds a trusted private investigator and commissions him to secretly track Scott's activities. At the same time, he began to watch Emily's every move, hoping to find more clues. In order not to alert the police, Zack still plays the role of a gentle and caring husband at home. He was even more attentive than ever, often sending Emily flowers and preparing her a lovey-dovey breakfast. Emily seemed to take it well and became more and more affectionate with Zack. However, Zack's heart was bleeding every time Emily snuggled warmly in his arms. He could not understand how his beloved wife could deceive him so cruelly. But for the success of his plan, he had to continue the show of pain. The private investigator's investigation soon progressed. He found Scott frequenting a jewelry store called the King Gold. The store was ostensibly a high-end jewelry store, but in fact it was a front for money laundering. Detectives suspect that Scott may be involved in a large-scale financial fraud network. Zack decides to take a chance and find out. He pretended to be interested in investing in jewelry and went to a jewelry store. While talking to the owner, he intentionally mentioned Scott's name. The shopkeeper's expression instantly became wary, and he vaguely avoided the subject. This reinforced Zack's suspicions. Meanwhile, Zack is secretly gathering evidence of Emily's crimes at his home. He finds some suspicious files on Emily's laptop detailing her and Scott's plan to conspire to frame him. Zack carefully copied the documents to be used as evidence in court. However, the real breakthrough came by accident. One night, Emily took a phone call and rushed out the door. Zack took the opportunity to check her cell phone's communication history, which was backed up in the cloud, and found a string of unfamiliar numbers. On a whim, he searched social media with the number and found Scott's secret account. The account is full of photos of Scott flaunting his wealth, including some illegal content. What's more, Zack realized that Scott had inadvertently revealed some information about tax evasion and money laundering in the comments section. All of this becomes compelling evidence. Zack compiled the information into an anonymous tip and sent it via encrypted email to the tax department and the police department. He was confident that with these leads, the authorities would launch an investigation into Scott. However, Zack knew that an official investigation alone would not be enough. He needs more direct evidence that Emily and Scott conspired to set him up. So he decided to take a risky move. Zack pretended to be on a business trip, but he secretly installed hidden cameras and recording devices in his home. He tells Emily he's going away for a week, but he's actually hiding out in a neighbor's house, keeping a close eye on things. That decision soon paid off. On the third day of Zack's business trip, Scott arrived at their home. The camera clearly captured Emily and Scott in an intimate embrace, and even recorded them discussing a specific plan to frame Zack. "Honey, I've already contacted the doctor," Emily says in the video. "And as soon as you leave me with a bruise on my face like you planned, I'll be able to charge Zack with domestic violence. The doctor will testify in favor of my claim." Scott responded with a smile, Don't worry, baby. When Zack goes to jail, we'll be together in the open. When the time comes, I'll love Lucy so much that she'll forget about that loser of a father." Hearing this conversation broke Zack's heart. He couldn't believe that Emily was so cruel as to not only set him up for prison, but to sever his relationship with his daughter. But he held back his anger and continued to gather more evidence. Over the next few days, Zack documented many more secret meetings between Emily and Scott. Not only did they discuss in detail their plan to frame Zack, but they also talked about how they would move Zack's assets and even planned to have Emily have an abortion so they could have their own child. Every time he heard one of these conversations, Zack felt his heart cut to the core. He wanted to go out and ask Emily why she was being so cruel. But reason told him that now was not the time. He had to be patient until enough evidence was gathered. On the last day of his business trip, Zack finally got hold of the decisive evidence. He videotaped a conversation between Emily and Scott discussing in detail how to perjure themselves in court. They even planned to bribe the judge to make sure they can get a ruling against Zack. Armed with this hard evidence, Zack quietly contacted a reputable attorney. After reviewing all of the evidence Zack had gathered, the attorney concluded that it was sufficient to prove Emily and Scott's criminal intent and to expose Scott's financial fraud. However, the attorney warned Zack, "We need more direct evidence of Scott's financial crimes. You've given us a valuable lead, but not enough to convict. I suggest you wait and see what happens with the police investigation." Zack nodded in agreement. He knew that now was not the time for a showdown. He must remain in disguise until the time is right. Back home, Zack continues to play the role of the unsuspecting husband. He smiled as Emily recounted her business trip, but his heart was filled with bitterness. He looks at the innocent Lucy in her sleep and secretly vows to protect her from this dirty plot. With that, Zack continued to gather evidence, waiting for the final showdown. He knew that there was an uphill battle ahead, but in order to guard his honor and protect his beloved daughter, he is ready to take on any challenge. The truth will come out and justice will be done. Zack was confident that if he persevered, the day would come when he would be victorious. Zack's wait has finally taken a turn for the better. On the eve of Emily and Scott's planned trip to Las Vegas, the police suddenly launch a massive investigation into Scott. As it turns out, Zack's anonymous tip triggers a series of investigations that ultimately reveal a vast network of financial fraud. Emily happened to be present when the police showed up at Scott's office. She watched in horror as Scott was taken away in handcuffs, not knowing what to do for a moment. Zack rushed to the scene as soon as he got the news, pretending to be a concerned husband. "Honey, what happened?" Zack asked, pretending to be anxious. Emily forced herself to calm down and stammered, "No, nothing. Scott's probably involved in some business dispute." Zack sneered, but remained outwardly concerned. He comforted Emily and offered her his full support through this difficult time. Emily was moved to tears and hugged Zack tightly. However, Zack knew the storm was just beginning. The next day, the police summoned Emily to assist in the investigation. Zack offered to accompany her, and Emily gratefully accepted. At the police station, Zack witnesses how Emily vigorously defends Scott and skillfully dodges questions from the police. It was then that Zack decided it was time to show his ace in the hole. He asked to speak to the officers alone and then handed over all the evidence he had collected. Recordings, videos, documents, all of which clearly show Emily and Scott's criminal scheme. The officer was too shocked to speak after hearing Zack's statement. He immediately convened a task force and began a comprehensive review of the evidence Zack had provided. Soon, things took a turn for the worse. Emily went from being a witness to a suspect and was detained by the police for investigation. When the news spread, the whole community was in shock. It's hard to believe that Zack and Emily, who have always seemed so in love, could have such a shocking inside story. As more witnesses come forward to provide information to the police, Scott and Emily's criminal network is gradually revealed. During the ensuing interrogation, Emily finally broke down. Faced with a mountain of evidence against her, she finally confessed to her crime. She cries about how she was compelled by Scott and how she fell into crime step by step. However, these remorseful moments could not change her fate. The court hearing started soon after. Zack took the witness stand and calmly described the entire incident. The entire courtroom fell silent as he described how Emily and Scott had conspired to frame him and planned to take his daughter. Emily kept her head down, afraid to look Zack in the eye. Scott, for his part, has remained silent and refused to acknowledge any of the charges. However, their sophistry paled in the face of overwhelming evidence. Eventually, the tribunal rendered its judgment. Scott was sentenced to 15 years in prison for multiple counts of financial fraud and tax evasion. Emily was sentenced to 5 years in prison for conspiracy to commit fraud, perjury, and other offenses. The court also awarded Zack full custody of Lucy, as well as a substantial portion of the marital estate. As the judge read the sentence, Zack felt a sense of relief. He turned his head to Emily and realized she was sobbing uncontrollably. For a moment, Zack's heart flashed. But soon, he remembers all of Emily's betrayals and his heart hardens again. "Emily," Zack said calmly, "I used to love and trust you so much. Why are you doing this to me, to Lucy?" Emily raised her teary eyes and choked out, "Zack, I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. I was blinded by money and lust. By the time I realized the mistake I'd made, it was too late." Zack took a deep breath and said, "Yes, it's too late. But no matter what, you'll always be Lucy's mom. When you get out of jail, I won't stop you from seeing each other if Lucy wants." When she heard that, Emily cried even harder. She knew that she had lost the love of the man who loved her forever, and possibly the love of her daughter as well. It was her own punishment. Outside the courtroom, the press swarmed to interview the husband who was brave enough to reveal the truth. Zack declined all interview requests and wanted to go home to Lucy as soon as possible. However, an even more difficult task awaited him, explaining it all to Lucy. That night, Zack sat by Lucy's bedside and gently explained to her what had happened. "Honey, Mommy did something wrong, so she's going away for a while." "I don't know," Zack said carefully. Confused, Lucy asked, "What about Uncle Scott? Did he do something bad too?" Zack nodded, "Yes, baby. But you don't have to worry. Daddy will always be there to protect you." Lucy was silent for a moment, then threw herself into Zack's arms and cried. Zack held his daughter close, letting the tears slide down his face. He knew that they would face many challenges together in the days ahead. For the next few days, Zack devoted himself to caring for Lucy. He took a long vacation to accompany Lucy through this difficult adjustment period. He took Lucy to a psychiatrist to help her understand and accept this harsh reality. At the same time, Zack began working on various follow-up matters. He packed Emily's clothes and personal belongings and sent them to her parents' home. He redecorated the house, trying to erase any trace of Emily's existence. Yet, even after all that, Zack still felt a deep emptiness. 20 years of marriage, just like that. He often woke up late at night and wept as he remembered the good times. But every time he sees Lucy's innocent smile, Zack rediscovers his motivation. He had to be strong for his daughter. He vowed to create a loving home environment for Lucy to make up for the loss of her mother. As time passes, Zack and Lucy's life is getting on track. Lucy is doing better and better in school and is coming to terms with not having a mother. Zack devotes himself to his work and parenting, trying to balance his career and family. Sometimes, Zack remembers Emily's life in prison and his heart ripples. But every time he did, he reminded himself that she was to blame. He had given her a chance, and she had chosen the path of betrayal and crime. In this way, Zack took Lucy, step by step, out of the darkness to meet a new life. He knew that there was still a long road ahead, but as long as Lucy was by his side, he had the courage to face all challenges. The truth was revealed and justice was done. Zack used his intelligence and courage to not only protect himself and his daughter, but to punish those who tried to harm them. This storm has made him cherish the sincere feelings in his life and has made him realize his inner strength. Time flies, and 2 years have passed in the blink of an eye. Zack and Lucy's life is getting on track, and father and daughter are closer than ever. Zack is fully committed to parenting. He learns to braid hair, make cute lunches, and even learns to sew, making all sorts of beautiful little outfits for Lucy's dolls. Whenever he saw Lucy's happy smile, Zack felt that all the hard work was worth it. Zack has also made great strides in his work. He quickly became one of the top insurance brokers in the company due to his keen insights and excellent business skills. The boss even hinted that he might be promoted to branch manager in the near future. However, even though life was getting better, there was still a scar in Zack's heart that couldn't be healed. Every late night, he remembers the time he used to spend with Emily. Those good memories are now bitter. Lucy has adapted to life without her mother, but she still occasionally reveals how much she misses her. Once, while Zack was organizing Lucy's school bag, he found a family portrait she had secretly drawn. Emily is painted extra large with a big smile. Zack looked at the painting with mixed feelings. To help Lucy cope better with these feelings, Zack takes her to see a psychiatrist regularly. On the advice of his doctor, Zack decided to have Lucy and Emily correspond. Although Emily has lost her visitation rights, she is still Lucy's mother, and cutting off contact completely could have a negative impact on Lucy's development. In this way, Lucy began to write Emily a letter every month, telling her about her life and growth. Emily writes back, expressing her thoughts and remorse. Zack reads the letter each time to make sure there is no inappropriate information before handing it to Lucy. Looking at Lucy's seriousness in writing the letter, Zack's heart was full of mixed feelings. He wished Lucy could have a whole happy family, but the reality was so cruel. He vowed to work harder to make up for the loss of Lucy's mother's love. Encouraged by his friends, Zack began to try to get back into his social life. He joined a number of support groups for single parents and met a lot of like-minded people. There, for the first time, he realized that there were so many people in the world who had similar experiences to his. One of them, a single mom named Sarah, caught Zack's eye. Sarah is gentle and caring and has a great love for children. Her son, Jack, was the same age as Lucy, and the two children became fast friends. Zack and Sarah began seeing each other more often, not only for the children's playdates, but also because of their growing empathy for each other. Sarah, who has also experienced marital betrayal, touches Zack with her strength and optimism. However, whenever the relationship was about to take a step forward, Zack couldn't help but back away. Emily's betrayal has left him so deeply scarred that he's afraid to give his heart again, only to be hurt in return. Understanding Zack's hesitation, Sarah gently said to Zack, "Zack, I know you've been through a lot of pain, but believe me, not all relationships end in betrayal. We can take our time, heal each other's wounds together." Zack was deeply moved by Sarah's words. He realized that he could not live in the shadow of the past forever. For Lucy's sake, and for his own, he should be brave enough to reopen his heart. Just as Zack is contemplating whether or not to take his relationship with Sarah a step further, his thoughts are interrupted by unexpected news. Emily was granted early parole. The news was a bombshell that instantly disrupted Zack's life. He didn't know how to face Emily, much less explain it to Lucy. On the advice of his lawyer, Zack agreed to let Emily see Lucy once a week. The first meeting was arranged at a neutral cafe. When Emily walks into the cafe, Zack is surprised to see how much she's changed. Once bright and shiny, she is now much more haggard, with apologies and remorse in her eyes. Lucy jumped on Emily as soon as she saw her and hugged her tightly around the waist. Emily wept and stroked her daughter's hair. Zack watched the scene with mixed feelings. "Zack," Emily said softly, "I know I'm in no position to ask for your forgiveness, but I really regret everything I did in the first place. For the past 2 years in prison, I've been reflecting on my mistakes every day. I lost the most important thing of all, your love for Lucy." Zack was silent for a moment, then said calmly, "Emily, the past is the past. What matters now is Lucy's future. As long as you're true to Lucy, I won't stop you from seeing each other." Emily nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Zack. I promise to cherish this opportunity to be a good mother." After that, Emily started seeing Lucy on a regular basis. While she can't fully atone for her past mistakes, she is at least trying to rebuild her relationship with her daughter. Zack had mixed feelings as he watched Lucy gradually regain her trust in her mother. The experience made Zack re-examine his life. He realized that, despite the betrayal and hurt he had experienced, life had given him a chance to start over. Lucy is growing up healthy and happy, with a thriving career and people like Sarah who understand him. What reason is there for him not to face the future bravely? So, Zack gathers his courage and formally confesses his love to Sarah. Sarah gladly accepted, and the two began a new relationship. They agreed to take things slowly, giving each other and the children plenty of time to adjust. Lucy was initially resistant to the idea of her father having a new girlfriend, but after seeing how gently Sarah treats her and how she respects her relationship with her mom, Emily, she grows to accept Sarah. Life seems to be finally getting back on track. Zack's career is thriving, Lucy is growing up healthy and happy, and his relationship with Sarah is steadily growing. Even with Emily back in their lives, things are looking up. However, Zack understands that life is never easy. Various challenges and difficulties may still be encountered in the future. But this time, he was confident he could face it, because he knows that as long as his heart is full of love, there is no difficulty that cannot be overcome. Looking back, Zack is overcome with emotion. He experienced the betrayal of his marriage and tasted the bitterness of revenge, but ultimately chose forgiveness and rebirth. This experience has made him more mature, stronger, and more appreciative of the good things in life. Looking ahead, Zack is hopeful. He is looking forward to building a new family with Sarah, to Lucy growing up healthy and happy, and to moving up the career ladder. He knows that as long as he stays positive and optimistic, life will continue to move forward in a good direction. As night fell, Zack stood on his balcony, staring up at the starry night sky. Lucy was happily chatting with Sarah in her room, and laughter came from time to time. Zack smiled and took a deep breath. He knew that whatever the future held, he was ready for it, because his heart is always full of love for life, anticipation for the future, and deep affection for the people around him. This is Zack's new life, a new chapter of hope, love, and courage. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.